I was just thinking how this morning at 10 o'clock, Sunday at 10 o'clock on a back in what 1990 something, you and I would have both been in a very different place. Uh,
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
I would have been running around, trying to keep my sanity, answering a million questions, thinking about my what I'm going to say in the pulpit and all that stuff. What would you have been doing?
I probably would have been trying to manage my two little children in the pew while people are interrupting my worship service, asking me to help run the photocopier for their Sunday school lesson.
Carol and I both served in a church in Yuba City, and our ministries overlapped. And we have both have had a story of getting in and transitioning in different ways. And I heard Carol's story a little bit through a friend, and it just was very interesting to me. You are the very first guest on the Facing Up podcast, so welcome. It's kind of fun that it's somebody from my past like that. I didn't know you right very well, and you didn't really know me.
Right.
I could tell you my impression of you was always very good from afar. I mean, I always just
Oh,
thought you were always kind of with it and always doing really cool stuff with your youth group. And our little youth group was always sort of hanging by a thread and trying to survive. And you guys were always just crushing it, it seemed like to me.
oh.
Yeah. Let's get into your story because that's what's to me the really fascinating thing. And yeah, so I've given you sort of this little outline, which basically, how did you get in? What went wrong? Why'd you stay in? When did you leave, if you have left? And what now? Sort of your story of being in and out of, or in and through, or I don't know how you would choose to define that. But why don't we start at the beginning? Like, how did you wind up becoming a minister in a church? What drew you in?
So that story in and of itself is really kind of humorous. My parents are actually atheists, agnostics. And so I wasn't actually raised in a church. I had a grandmother who went to a community church and an aunt that went to a Presbyterian church, but my mom was kind of the 60s hippie and not really into religion. So and then I have a stepdad that was really much more on the atheist side. Um, and so in high school, well, in junior high, I did the, hey, let's try drinking alcohol and, doing those kinds of things. So my freshman year in high school, I was sneaking the friends, parents' booze and, with them and kind of being a little party girl, um, but happened to get into some friend groups of people who went to church and realized that church youth groups had cute boys in them.
That
And so I actually started going to church my freshman year because I had these friends that were going, and there were, some other friends that I wanted to meet. And then I found out that I think it actually made my stepdad more angry when I went to church than if I came home drunk.
wow.
And so I found this incredible way to rebel against my parents, you know? And in in the extroverted Aries personality way that I have, I decided to go full force with that and join. It happened to be a Presbyterian church, so it was, a little bit more on the liberal side. But yeah, the bottom line is I really got into religion because it ticked my stepdad off.
That is a little backwards. That's hilarious. Where
But
was
in
this? Where did you grow up?
This was in Yuba City. I actually
Oh,
my first church was the church that I ended up being the youth pastor at 15 years later,
oh my
or
goodness.
10
Okay.
years later. So
Okay.
I'm from Yuba City. I graduated from Yuba City High School in 1987. I did move away to Chico for a couple years. When
Okay.
I moved to Chico, and so through high school, I ended up like fully joining the Presbyterian Church. I was baptized. Um, I ended up becoming the youth pastor there. Asked me if I wanted to be a junior high leader, and so she saw some leadership abilities within me and was able to nurture that and really bring that out. And that was exciting. As a teenager,
Yeah.
being recognized for those things.
Hmm.
Um, so when I moved to Chico, I was looking for a church that needed help with youth group stuff. And the Presbyterian church up there had lots of college kids. It's right located, like attached to the campus.
Hmm.
So they had lots of people to help with their youth group. I actually ended up in a Southern Baptist church um, and they needed help running their youth programs. So I did that. I ended up meeting the man that I ended up marrying, and then they decided to hire a youth director, but it was a Southern Baptist church, so they weren't going to
Yeah.
hire me.
Nope, you were the wrong gender.
Even though I was really doing the job.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but we stayed there for a little while, and then I got word that St. Andrew was looking for a youth director, and talked to my husband about it. And we had a little boy at the time. We had a 3-year-old, and um, we decided to go ahead, and I got the job, and we moved back to Yuba City.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've
Oh,
got company with me.
oh,
Um, so, and that's how I ended up at St. Andrew in 1993. And a little bit later in the 90s, decided to continue. I didn't finish college while I was in Chico. I dropped out and started having kids.
yeah.
Um, and so back in Yuba City, finally, by the end of the 90s, I found a program through William Jessup University where I could finish my degree and got a double bachelor's in leadership and biblical theology. Again, to my stepdad's
You're still just rebelling.
distress. I'm still rebelling. I'm almost 30 and I'm still rebelling against him.
Oh,
Um, and so yeah, that ended up in the church that way, but really found it was a great way for me to develop a lot of leadership
yeah.
abilities also and some skills there. And
Yeah.
it was a good experience, and it's what I needed at that time.
Where was like God in all of that? I mean, how did you, what was your relationship with God or what, your understanding of that? How did that play in?
Yeah, I did have many, many times where I felt very connected to God, where I felt e- e-
Yeah.
God moving in our lives. I really felt a call to to help kids figure out how to create a happy life. That's really why I went into ministry with youth specifically, is I saw these kids struggling through high school in many of the ways that I struggled, and I was just like, there's people and this God that loves you,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we can help guide you through this, and it can be good. So it
Yeah.
was really about finding that, and a lot of it was that sense of community,
Mm.
being an extrovert like
Mhm.
I am.
Yeah.
I wanted that sense of feeling a part of something bigger.
That sounds all wonderful. Why aren't you still doing it? What went sideways?
Yeah. There's never, it's funny. I was married for 20 years, and people ask, well, what happened? I'm like, there's never one thing.
Mm.
And it's kind of the same answer
Mm.
with deciding to separate from the
Ooh.
church. It's
th-
There's never just one thing you could put your finger on. I can put my finger on a number of different things. And it
Really?
never was one point in time. It was
Mhm.
always a development of many things happening
Yeah.
over time. And then just they say your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 26. And after
Mhm.
26, I'm realizing, okay, starting to do a lot of critical thinking and things like that. And how does this fit with this? So when I look back on it, what kind of went wrong?
Mm.
I think so.
Mm.
There are a couple specific things. In
Mhm.
1999, I had my third child. My middle child was a special needs child. And in 2000, my middle child was 4 years old. And we were at a cousin's wedding, and my middle child wandered off into a pond. and he drowned. He was revived enough to be on basically life support for 40 days. And during those 40 days, I had a 9-year-old at home and I had an almost 1-year-old. And I'm having to go back and forth between Yuba City and Oakland Children's Hospital, trying to navigate this world of what's going to happen with this child and just being absolutely crushed as a parent. Um, and during that time, because we're part of a faith family and because I had such a strong connection with other people around our community through other churches, because I had developed a very great support system of all these youth directors. There were about 8 of us that would come together monthly. And so I had people of many Christian faiths talking about, if anyone deserves a miracle, you do. God can raise this child from
Yeah.
this bed. And I mean, he was comatose with brain loss, not brain damage. You look at the CAT scans, it was brain loss, it was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Um, and just trying to justify, okay, what happened? And then he did pass away. And my husband and I had been married 10 years. And at that point, there were a number of times when he and I were not on the same page. And we were trying to go, yeah, I was trying to get him to go to therapy with me. And if any time there, if a family's going to fall apart, that's a great time for a family to fall apart.
Yeah.
We didn't. We pulled together. Um, and but the next
Mm.
10 years was trying to reconcile with God. Why?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
what is this about? And it
Mhm.
doesn't, this kind of pain doesn't align with what I read
No,
about who God is. And of course, now I'm going to get a little emotional, but
of course.
um and
Yeah.
my husband and I developed very different worldviews.
Hmm.
He became very much, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I
Mhm.
hated when he'd watch the news because he'd end up frustrated for the rest of the night about everything.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
somehow I developed this very
Mhm.
optimistic outlook, worldview, where it's like, we need to realize that every day that we have is a gift, and everything in our lives is a gift from God. That if God is the loving God we say he is,
Mhm.
then he's not giving us horrible things. He's giving us things to enjoy. He's giving us a life and people around us to love and celebrate and enjoy. Um, and I became very determined to find joy.
Hmm.
Whereas I felt like my husband at the time was just living in order to get to heaven one day.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
everything in between was him enduring it. And those two worldviews became very hard to live in the same house.
Wow.
So 10 years after that, we've been married 20 years now, and 10 years after losing our son, um, yeah, I hit a spot where I was like, I'm not in a place where I think I'm supposed to be. I felt very much out of my calling now.
Mm.
I had left ministry.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
by that, yeah, because gosh, we lost Christopher in 2000. In 2004, I quit the youth ministry position.
Mm.
And that's when I kind of left St. Andrew. I left the
Mhm.
church um to give whoever that new person was a space to create their own ministry
Yeah.
without the shadow of this 11, 12-year legacy
Mm.
that I had built. Um, so we went to another church in the community, and so by 6 years later, my life is blowing up.
Mm.
At the same time, I felt very much like there was somewhere else I was supposed to be in
Hmm.
this place, and I needed to figure out how to make that happen. And um, our oldest son had moved off he was off in the army. Our youngest son was now 9, and he also played a huge part in a lot of this. My youngest son is gay, and my ex-husband had a really hard time adjusting to that, especially when my son came out to him a few years later in high school. I saw it coming. And
Yeah.
so I also needed to now reconcile, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
here's this incredible child, this incredible, creative, intelligent young man
Yeah.
who is kind and gentle and loving and gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what does that mean in
Yeah.
the eyes of God?
Right.
God, there's no way this this God that I believe in
Yeah.
doesn't love this child. So how does that fit in?
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of reconstruct all of those things and try to figure out, what does that mean? And so yeah, and in 2011, right around 2011, everything just kind of blew up and all these questions were left lingering. So,
That
but it was a
is,
long journey to that explosion.
oh gosh, there's so much in what you said, and so much that I resonate with. And it's interesting, Carol, because our timelines even sort of line up, because that's
Oh,
about 2013 is when I resigned from the church. But by 2011, I was on fumes, and so I was, even though I was still in the church. But a couple of things you said. One of them is I find really fascinating. You went different directions. Your ex-husband like just kind of went dark and saw this world as something just to be endured till you go to heaven. And then you chose joy. And um, I mean, how? I just like, how do you, in the face of kind of your ideas of God dissolving, you're not at your church, you've lost your son, all this confusion, how do you choose joy in the middle of all that? Or I mean, how do you I don't even know how to phrase the question. It just seems like an odd choice. Despair just seems like a
probably.
much more logical choice.
Yeah. I mean, I there's a lot of times I can't blame my ex-husband for taking the direction that he did. He's in a much better place now, I'll tell you. He's in a
Good.
much better place now.
That's great.
Um, but I think I just resolved myself to, if we all went so dark, this place would be horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there's so many people that are finding joy and finding love. So it's got to be there. It's got to be
Yeah.
a real thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tough call. I'm
It
not sure I have an answer for that, other than, if I was going to survive,
yeah.
that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. I actually love that you're struggling to find an answer to that because, like in as I went through my dark night, it became very existential. There was no why. It was just to be or not to be. Will I choose to live or will I just choose to die? And so choosing joy, choosing gratitude, choosing positive is just it's almost as simple as like do I blow my brains out or keep living? I mean, there's a lot of ways to commit suicide without killing yourself. There's a lot of ways to say no to your life. And, in my own journey, it's been like, I want to start from that yes, and then figure out how that looks in my life and story. But the reason for the yes is I can't give you one other than the alternative. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Which,
right.
how would you rather live?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. But now you have come to a place that you call universalism, and I would love to
Yeah.
hear more about what you mean by that and what that is.
Within, as I hit that 2010, 2011 time, and things just kind of started to blow up, and I started asking, And I'm recognizing that my 9-year-old son is probably gay at that point.
Yeah.
Um, Although we didn't talk about it until he came out at the age of 16. So um, it, I really started to do some critical thinking that if this,
Hmm.
then that can't be.
Right.
So and I started to kind of triangulate the data that was around me,
Hmm.
and I started kind of listening to other people that I was starting to meet who had different belief systems, and realizing the parallels in a lot of their belief systems with Christianity. And then I also started to really look into, the I remember taking a class at William Jessup called exegetical hermeneutics, and it took me half the class to learn to spell it. But really, that idea of looking at the context in which scripture was written, the original language, that context, really kind of researching back to what's that foundation, super foundation, meta foundational
Uh-huh. Yeah.
of biblical scripture, and realizing that humanity has really taken a lot of those scriptures and adjusted it for their
Oh,
interpretations and these
for sure.
translations that
Sure.
um, that have really kind of messed things up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and that had a huge part in starting to look at other belief systems also and find
Hmm.
out, okay, well, and then in the bigger picture of things, as I look back on it, I think what I was doing was I was saying, okay, here's the belief systems here, here's the belief systems here, here's these. There's a lot of parallels and crossovers in
Hmm.
the stories, in the symbolisms, in the outcomes of what these religions are trying to point us to.
Yep. Yep.
And that is connection to something bigger than us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
and but the ways that they get there is different. And then I really started thinking about, okay, God created everything, God loves everyone. Why would God only give the story to this one group of people, and everything else he just allows them to make it all up?
Yeah.
But they make it up with so many similarities. And so I
Yeah.
really started to understand and come to the belief, and maybe it's my own choice to believe that. I'm okay, I'll stand on that.
Yeah.
That God revealed, and I'll say himself, I don't really believe in gender for God anymore, but
Hmm.
God revealed himself to everybody in some way.
Hmm.
And God is the God of truth. So anything that's true must belong to God. All these religions have these things that we all agree are true.
Hmm.
So, and God must have loved them. They're his creation too. So at some point, all these truths were revealed, and the people took the truths and created stories around them in order to explain them to the larger community and
Hmm.
to try to create a why to things. Everybody's got some truth, but at some point, people are going to get the story wrong. There's going to be that's why we have so many conflicting things between religions also.
Yeah.
And so I started to kind of grasp on to what seemed true and common between these religions, and find ways to celebrate my connection to that higher energy, that higher being, celebrate within the ways that other people and belief systems celebrate. And
Hmm.
if that resonated with me and brought me to a place where I felt stronger in that connection, that's what worked for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's what helped me grow and become more loving
Yeah. Yeah.
and become stronger in a sense of grace.
Mhm.
I tell people now I have a better sense of grace and mercy for myself than I ever had working for a church.
Mm.
And how sad is that?
It's sad. That is very sad. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, so in a way, I would summarize or could maybe summarize what you're saying like again, so much agree with the things you're saying. When I left, it was this, a lot of people when they leave the church, they're so angry that they are just like, this is all just nonsense and stupid. But I didn't leave with this idea that everything was wrong and that all these relationships and the positive things that happen, I couldn't just like throw all that out. I mean, there was a lot of
No.
good. Yeah. So for me, a big part of the struggle was how do I, hold on to the things that are a part of me and my background and shaped me and were good and the people and yet there's part of this that is really toxic that I have to discard. And what
Right.
um the way I sometimes summarize it now is like there's the truth in Christianity rather than the truth of Christianity. And so
I like
that,
that.
yeah. So, I mean, and with the universal idea, you would say, like, as humans, we tell stories that capture these great mysteries and truths of who are we and what's this all about. And there is truth in the stories, but it as well, I was a Southern Baptist, so the story was true, capital T. At least Presbyterians had a little more. It seemed like to me that there
More
was,
flexibility.
yeah, like, that some of these other stories may have a little truth in them too. Of course, we've got the
Get the
the really
ultimate
good stuff.
truth.
Yeah.
Right.
But but with universalism, if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is your understanding of universalism is God loves everyone. There are different stories or religions, whatever that people tell, um, but there are similarities and validity in all of them, so long as you don't like um, codify or dogmatize your story and say mine is right, everyone else is wrong, probably going to hell. Yeah,
Yeah. And I if I'm going to be really honest, I'm not even sure I believe in hell anymore.
yeah.
And I mean that's up for debate. None of us have been to verify it's there or not and come back that I'm aware of. Um, but I know that there's a lot of people that create hell on earth for themselves,
That's right. Yeah,
um, and allow themselves to stay in that.
yeah,
Um, and that's horribly sad.
yeah,
Um, but I really feel like you know, if you
yeah,
can attach yourself to that I mean there's the whole idea of vibration and higher energy being better for you anyway.
mhm,
Um, when you move yourself into those higher energies and that
yeah,
higher sense that you feel more joy
right.
and you can deal with those things. There absolutely is depression and mental health issues and stuff like that in the world that will drag you down and hold you down. um but there's so many. God gave us medicine and science so that we can deal with those things
Right.
and make those choices to try to move out of that,
Yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
so
I wrote when I was after I left, I hit the road for a while and I tried to sort of reframe my Christian faith and wrote a book called Hard Reset. But one of the chapters in there was Why I Love Hell. And basically my conclusion was that hell, as it's portrayed in the Bible, most of the time is a refining thing. And so, like you're saying, we make our own hell, but it's even a tool of God's mercy to teach us to let go of things and turn to a better way. So, hell, um, burns away what's, not right, what's wrong, the pain that we feel. So it's this idea that God is love, and they're knowingly this God created everything, and there's this percentage, maybe a large percentage, that's just going to suffer eternally because they did it wrong or got it wrong or said it wrong or whatever. Um, I couldn't make peace with that. And I did
Yeah.
write a chapter on universalism. And it's really weird to me that I said all kinds of crazy stuff in this book about the Bible, about stuff that would, just set most evangelicals in, like, oh, get the pitchforks, let's
Right.
attack. But the one that really, I was so surprised, Carol, because the chapter that really got people angry was the one on universalism. The
Oh,
idea that in some way God would reconcile all things to him or herself. I agree with you beyond gender. I hate that we have to use a pronoun at all. But in some way, that our creator would reconcile or had this idea of like bringing all things together in a positive way. That was just anathema to the Christians, in my life. And I wonder, like, why is that one so offensive to
yeah.
people?
Yeah. But I mean, because our goal is to bring everything. I mean, we say that, we want to evangelical, be evangelize the world and bring everybody to Jesus. Well,
Right,
if God can do that without us,
right.
why not celebrate that he does?
Yeah, and there are pictures, some in pictures in the Bible are not of this great separation, but of this, reconciling all things together in Christ and all that. Like so there are pictures of God sort of bringing everything together.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's really I still don't have a good answer, but I think it's because maybe I'm just guessing right now, but it our identity gets so wrapped up in our dogma, our hardened story that to have that the idea that it might not be true with a capital T is just terrifying. And so universalism, if that other story could also be true, well, that means that mine is not the truth with a capital T. And if my story is not, that I'm leaning on and trusting in and have built my whole life on, if that's not truth with a capital T, my whole existence is threatened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an incredible way to explain it. Absolutely. And, I also think a lot of times we become addicted to that sense of community and the activities,
Mhm.
that schedule of going to church and being with our community of people. And I think we put a lot of our value in that because it seems like an empirical way to feel a part of things.
Yes, yes, for sure. And it validates and like so it reinforces the story and yeah, and gives you the sense that all is well. Look at all these people who agree with me and we're all singing the same song
Right.
and yet I think if you really look in the hearts of all the people, if you really dug down, you would find a lot of questions, a lot of doubts, a lot of uncertainties. You know, gay children, things that don't fit in at least the Southern Baptist paradigm at all. Um, and well, how do I put all this together? Just shut up and sing, like.
Yeah. 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 Fake
Um,
it till you make it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, now, you obviously have come to a a good place. How do you like what does your life look like now? Your I don't know if what you even call it, your spiritual life or your social life and these things that were met by church. How do you exist day to day now?
Yeah. So I've built a very interesting life for myself now and have experienced some incredible blessings in this universe.
Mhm.
Um so I ended up for a while after ministry, I created a graphic design business and I had a partner with a construction safety management firm where 90% of my clients were construction. And so I was doing a lot of technical kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And my business partner decided announced one day that he was going to retire in about 5 years, and that would have meant that I would have had to totally remarket myself. And um, he was a very unique niche in the construction world in California. And I just kind of like, man, I wonder what I'm going to do next. And out of the blue, I get a call from our county job placement center, who I used to hire all my bookkeepers through. And they just kind of developed a relationship with them. They kind of knew what I did. And they're attached to our county superintendent of schools, and they run an adult ed program. And they called me and they said, "Hey, we need someone that can teach Microsoft Office and maybe QuickBooks. How are you on? Could you teach those?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I can." And I said, "But I don't have a teaching credential." And they said, "Well, we can get you a teaching credential." And within 10 days, they got me a California career technical
Yeah.
education teaching credential in business and finance. And so I started teaching a night class in their adult ed program for Microsoft Office, and then a QuickBooks class also. Even though I understood bookkeeping and understood QuickBooks, I hated it. That's why I hired other people to do it for me. But I'm like, yeah, I can teach.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a neat experience because, in youth ministry, you're often in teaching type roles. You're
Hmm.
teaching Sunday school, you're
Yep.
running your youth groups, and, you have these micro lessons that you're doing, micro sermons kind of thing. Um, and I did miss that. Well, when you have a CTE credential in any teaching credential in California, for the first 2 years, you're going through a teacher induction program and you're given a mentor. The mentor they gave me happened to be the CTE director for 3 counties, a tri-counties consortium. And he came into my class in about 6 months into my adult ed class, and he said, "Well, how do you feel about teaching full time?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, there's this high school over in Arbuckle, this tiny, literally 3,000 people town on I-5 in the middle of Northern California Valley." And he said, "They need a business teacher, and I think you'd be really good at it. Are you okay working with teenagers?"
Yeah.
"Yes, please." And so
Yeah.
I applied and got that job and told my business partner, "I'm sorry, I'm going into teaching." Um, And within a few years, the principal there had gotten a superintendent job over in Wheatland, and she said, "I want to bring you with me." My first year at in Arbuckle, she walked into my classroom and she said, "I have this new program I want you to implement next year." And I said, all I heard as a first year teacher is, "Hey, you have a job next year." I'm like, "Okay, cool. What is it?" She said, "I'm going to send you to a training." So she sends me to a training the next month, and I'm sitting in this room, and it's a career exploration and life planning class that she wants to incorporate. It's a freshman career exploration class. It's called Get Focused, Stay Focused, and it's this really cool freshman class that you basically take the kids on a journey of self-exploration, career exploration, and then figuring out a 10-year plan for life success. And I'm sitting in this seminar, this training, and it's clicking with me that this is about helping kids figure out how to create a happy life.
Hmm.
And I'm having this epiphany kind of moment
Hmm.
of, here I am 10, 15 years later. I've been called out of
Yeah.
ministry, where I got into ministry because I wanted to help kids figure out how to create a happy life.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in this seminar, and just as this minute is dawning on me, okay, and this is the way God, the universe works, to slap you in the face once in a while. Okay. Just as this realization of this is about helping kids create a happy life, they call up a guest speaker from the room, the room. a counselor from Esparto High School who's been doing this at her school. This counselor happened to be, of all people, the daughter-in-law of my senior pastor that I worked under at St. Andrew.
Oh, wow. Wow.
She's married to the youngest son who was in my youth group when I was there.
Mhm.
And I must have gone white. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I hear you. I see what y'all are doing here."
Yeah. Wow.
So I ended up implementing this program. In my
Nice.
first year of teaching it, I decided I was nowhere near where I needed to be to reach my tenure plan. So I decided to go back to school and get a master's in education. And in that master's, I also became a certified trainer for that curriculum.
Mm.
I started working with the publisher. And so in all this, I'm creating a life that was
Yeah.
exactly what I thought I would be doing, just in a different context. Since I was in high school, it's what I wanted to do is help kids create programs so that kids can figure out how to be happy. And so now, but it's not as much a spiritual happiness as it is creating a context for their life,
Mhm.
um, and understanding the autonomy and self-efficacy that they can develop, and the way that they actually have so much more control over their life than they think they have,
Mhm.
um, and that they
Mhm.
can make choices if they're not
Mhm.
happy, that
Mhm.
they can pivot and adjust, and I can teach them methods of how to do that effectively.
Yeah.
And and so within that, there's always a spiritual parallel
Mhm.
to everything, you know, and kids are spiritual. And in California, you can't bring up religion, but if a kid asks, you can engage in a
Mhm.
conversation if they initiate it. And so it became a great way for us to really talk about life in a bigger picture,
Yeah.
and how do you align all of that. And in the curriculum it even talks about, do you belong to a church? Because financially, there's a whole chapter on financial planning.
Mhm.
And is that going to be a part of your life? Are you going to give to a church? Are you going to budget to give to charities, or
Mhm.
social justice issues and things like that? So
Yeah.
um, so it's all kind of played in somehow on some
Mm.
underlying level. Um, and it's been really good. And now I still live in Yuba City. I own a house here, and I still have a huge circle of friends that were part of the church or were part of my high school youth group still. I There's about a dozen of us that went to high school together. We're all in youth group together, and we still have dinner on Christmas Eve every year. So there's still that community. There's still that sense of being a part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I also discovered a love for New Orleans. And I visit New Orleans a couple times a year. I actually just spent 3.5 months house sitting for friends out there who are in a band, and they were on tour, and they said, "Hey, you can work remotely, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the new job I have is really neat." Now I actually support schools over 12 counties that are getting grants in California to create career technical education programs and dual enrollment programs so that kids are getting high school and college credit at the same time. And most of what I do is remote on Zoom with these schools, helping them create these programs. So I spent 3 months in New Orleans, and people always picture Bourbon Street, but New Orleans is so much more. There's actually a huge music and art scene. I'm a musician. Clearly, I
Mhm.
love music. Um, and so I've created a second community for myself down there, of artists and creatives who have incredible experiences. It's of course the
Yeah.
most haunted city in the United States, and
Yeah.
I have friends that give ghost tours.
Oh,
And
fun.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of participate in that community also, and the experience, kind of figuring out these different spiritual experiences
Yeah.
and different belief systems. There's it's popular for a voodoo community down there, and it's interesting. Voodoo is not the dark, scary thing that Hollywood and Christian churches have made it out to be. It's
Mhm.
actually a very karmic religion. And so whatever you put out there comes back to you. And so if you do dark things come back to you. So
Wow.
um, I have a couple friends that are voodoo priestesses and have actually taught me a lot about those belief systems.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting. Yeah, there is a dark side to it,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
you don't have to participate in that. There's a very dark side to a lot of Christian churches also.
Oh,
So,
no, no question. No question.
so it's very interesting. So I've created a much more kind of open-minded
Yeah.
um, life for myself and found a lot of joy dancing to some incredible music down there. And
Yeah.
we have our rituals of singing in church. Well, there's a lot of similarities to the rituals and singing in a community of people in a second line down a street
Mhm.
in New Orleans
Mhm. Mhm.
and experiencing that joy and that celebration of life together.
Wow, wow. You have just described a very rich landing. And not exactly out of church because I don't get the sense that you ever just sort of spat on all things Christian, but just that you widen so, like, and universal,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, right.
It's like you
Uh-huh.
were saying, it wasn't throwing the doors open and leaving forever.
Yeah.
I'm actually still a member on record at St. Andrew, and
Uh-huh.
until last year I participated in their serving on their personnel committee and
Yeah.
serving their staff and
Yeah.
really, working to protect and support the staff of the church. And
Yeah.
because that's such a strange life to live. It's such a fishbowl, and
Yeah.
it's an
Oh.
interesting thing. Probably another whole podcast.
Yeah, I mean, like what you're describing almost is like a pot or a plant just bursting its pot or something. It's not,
Yeah,
you're just like,
yeah,
it just got bigger than, and through some, that crack and some tragedy and some things like that that were part of that. But I love in the beginning how you said it wasn't one thing. The analogy
right.
to a marriage falling apart, I think is really a good one. I've never thought of that. Thankfully, by some miracle, my marriage hasn't fallen apart. I've certainly put my wife through
And
the
I love
paces, but yeah,
that.
well, I mean, it's great. Yeah, it's great if you can pull it off, but man, you're right. I mean, my um, disaffection from the church was not just one big explosion either, and it's hard because people, well, what happened, and then be like, gosh,
It's
uh,
like you got a week to sit down and talk about it because
yeah, so many
it's a lot.
things. Um, the the other thing that strikes me in what you said is just how you as a person have come through this like bigger, still very much yourself. Like you haven't changed in some ways. You've just expanded your horizons. You're still working with youth. You're still, I mean, all the things that you were, you are. None of that changed.
Yeah,
I think like for me, when I left the ministry, my fear was, well, I've lost everything. And like you, I found another avenue to sort of be myself in a more wide setting where I'm like leading the senior center in St. Helena, but it's the same kind of there's community and I'm able to sort of
yeah,
positive life and all of that good stuff that I found in church, I'm still, I found it's like it's all over the place. I guess maybe church gives you this idea you got to come here at this time and we'll
right.
dose it out to you. Like give you your shot of these things when you're like, wait a minute, it's all over the place. If you just open up
Yeah.
your eyes.
No,
Yeah,
it is. It is much more an expansion
yeah,
of my faith and my community,
huh.
and feeling an attachment to something even bigger than the God that was explained to me in church.
And yet, for that to happen, that little God had to die. And that hurts. I mean, that, at least for me, was really whoa, because I thought that was the big God. And so when I lost that, I just like, there's, Did you experience any ever a time like that where it just felt like wow, the whole thing is shattered? Or for you, was it more of like just this constant growing?
So, right after my son died, yes, I went through that kind of that WTF, God.
Yeah,
And God and I had some shout outs with each other
for
too,
sure.
um there were a couple times I screaming in my car at him.
Mhm. Sure. Oh, yeah.
um
Yeah.
but but in the long run, and in God's quietness,
Hmm.
allowing me to sit with it and then reconcile it
Hmm.
and start looking outside,
Uh-huh.
and just looking, and some of it was looking for something else. But it
Right.
turned out it wasn't something else. It was just more of what is.
Yeah. I love that. Not something else, something more, like maybe
Right.
just to summarize.
Yeah,
And
very much. And yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, my roots,
Hmm.
the church, I love the potted plant analogy.
Hmm.
The roots could only go so far, but once that pot was broken open and I planted myself in a much more in a field,
Yeah.
there's no limit to where those roots can go now.
Yeah.
You
What I mean, just what a beautiful, joyful picture that is
Yeah.
of growth. Maybe just one last thought, Carol. Like, what would you say to someone whose pot is breaking, or someone who is in that point where maybe it's a tragedy, maybe it's just the accumulation of nonsense that people are just at the breaking point and they're in that really dark place. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of
Yeah,
lost hope? Yeah,
those shards of a broken plant or a broken pot are sharp
yeah,
and they cut deep sometimes.
yeah.
Um, and it's okay to sit in the discomfort for a while.
Mm,
It's
mm,
okay to
yeah,
sit in the silence, asking, "Where's that voice?"
yeah,
Um, it's okay to be there,
yeah. Wow,
but keep
that,
your ears and your eyes open,
yeah,
because there is something else and something bigger. And don't be afraid to ask people
yeah.
what they're thinking and what they're believing and where they're at.
Hmm.
And don't be afraid to talk about the discomfort. It's not a sin to question.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you sinful or wrong or bad or dirty or anything to be in that place of discomfort.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and it's okay to start grasping on to things that do feel good,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that do bring healing,
Hmm.
that have the intent of bringing you comfort. And if some of that is in the idea of a Buddhist meditation, if it's in the idea of um people kind of joke about the hippie side of essential oils and herbs and
Hmm.
things like that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
but the everything has vibration, and there is healing in those things.
Yeah.
Um, there's
Mm.
there's healing in the journaling and the creativity
Mm.
of writing and
Yeah.
creating something new,
Yeah.
uh,
It's
putting those
interesting.
things
Yeah.
out into the world.
Uh, Interesting you mentioned journaling. That was huge for me. Was that a big part of your healing?
So I always have this great intent of journaling, and I have so many journals that I've started. But
Yeah.
I'm very much also an audio learner, and so
Hmm.
that means I don't just have to
Right.
hear it; I need to hear myself say it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my journaling came through just talking to people
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and being honest and transparent and hearing myself say things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
um
Y- You were,
admitting I was angry with God.
you were blessed to have people like that, right?
Yeah.
Too, I think a lot of people would have loved to have played that role and been willing to play that role in my life, but I shut them out partly because of
Well,
who
and
I
there, to
was.
be honest, there were moments where I went to a therapist.
Yeah,
And so
sure.
there's your safe space to
You bet.
hear yourself say those things. It's,
Yeah.
it's, there were times where that person that I was talking to was a therapist.
Yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, then, absolutely no shame in that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I really love that advice, the core advice, that it's okay to be there. I do think like this sense of failure or guilt on top of the shattered, like the pot's broken, I'm a failure, I did something wrong.
Also, Maury, it's okay to be in a place where you find joy after that.
Yeah.
Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we can make ourselves feel guilty of, oh, I'm dancing in a street in the middle of New Orleans with all these people, and it's not a hymn, and it's not Christian rock.
Yeah.
But it's okay to find joy in that, and to
Yeah.
experience your and to let yourself experience joy
Yeah.
in that. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
So it's okay to just be human. And
Yeah.
human means you're going to have an array of experiences and an array of feelings and an array of opinions that are going to conflict. Your own
Yeah.
opinions are going to conflict
Yeah.
at some points.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
The real God is big enough to be okay with all of it.
Again, I come back to the word universal, like it's all okay, like it's not just there's, sanctioned, not sanctioned, don't feel this
Right.
way, don't it just like, yeah, just open and it's okay. Like I love that advice. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. This, for me, has been really encouraging, even healing to hear your story of coming through all of this. Yeah,
It's such a blessing to me to hear your parts of your story along in this too, and to
sure.
know to almost know that we were going through the same things at the same time is really kind of crazy. The parallels that
It
we have with those, those connections and parallels that we have. None of us are alone.
No, and yeah, it's almost creepy. I mean, there were, as you were sharing your story, I kept having to bite my tongue because, like, yeah, me too. Like, I had with a medical crisis with a
Yeah.
child, and some things like that were real crisis points for me as well. So yeah, so many places. I think like the human experience is much more universal than we think. I mean, our little boxes that we put around our belief systems like polarize us, separate us into tribes, and I just what you said too about how like it's just I feel the same way, just so much, wow, I can love everyone. Like I don't have to be so judgmental or save anyone or whatever. I can just, connect and yeah, so there are many, many parallels between our stories, but there are some differences too, and some things I've learned from you today. So thank you again for taking the time, Carol. All right,
Thanks a
thanks
bunch.
for going first. Okay, see
We'll
you
talk to
later.
you soon.
Bye bye.